Broglio attorneys offer cost-effective service in select areas of law, including road accident fund claims, and under discussion today, personal injury matters. So Michael, personal injury cases include medical and hospital malpractice cases, where you basically sue the doctor or the hospital when something's gone wrong. Is this similar to road accident fund cases that you've spoken to us about before, or is it very different?
They're similar in a superficial way, but deep down they're far more complex. They're far more difficult to prove, and it's the kind of case where you need a specialized firm of attorneys to take on and fight your case. It's also much more costly to prove these types of cases. When people go to hospital and something goes wrong, they naturally assume it's negligence. Sometimes it's not necessarily the case. For example, there's a lot of bacteria in hospitals that can sometimes lead to septicemia setting in, and it's not necessarily because the hospital, the doctors, or the nurses were negligent. There's a reason they pump you full of antibiotics when you go to a hospital, and that is because you're exposed to a lot of illness, and sometimes, despite their best efforts, they can't avoid that.
So today we're discussing a case that your firm is currently busy with, involving a child that was born with birth defects in the form of brain damage. But I want to know from you, before we get into the details of the case, is how do you know that there's something that's wrong with a child who's just been born, because naturally they can't speak straight after they've been born?
That's a very good question. It obviously normally shows in the way that the child behaves. It can show, for example, in eating difficulties, bone deformities, but quite often in physical movement. The child either struggles to walk or walks with a scissor gait. The child, for example, can't sit upright at the same age that other children would. Normally these signs start showing up 6 to 9 months after the birth, and the parents start thinking that there may be something slightly wrong.
And tell me, how does this type of injury typically occur?
Typically it's from a prolonged birth, where the baby's in the birth canal for too long, quite often upside down in a breech position. And basically, in that type of situation, doctors would normally perform a cesarean, so that that problem can be alleviated. In this particular case, for example, the doctors left the lady in labor for 30 hours, and that's where the problem came about.
In the case that we're talking about right now, what can the parents sue for?
Well, basically, that type of case is huge, because they can sue for everything. The child is never going to be able to work properly, never going to be able to look after himself. The parents are going to have nurses to assist them. They're going to have to look after the child for the rest of his life. He really can't function as a normal human being. So whether it's money for pain and suffering, money for loss of earnings, money for future medical treatment, and that's so important, to go and make sure that the child gets the best treatment possible. It's a very substantial claim, and it covers all of the categories that we would claim for in any personal injury case.
Excellent results, and the top professional team make Broglio attorneys the best choice for you. Visit their website onlinelaw.co.za for their full contact details today.
Stay with Expresso and SABC3.